Hey friends, welcome to the Angie Ambrosetti Show, Let Her Out to Play. I'm Angie, your host, a teenage mom turned multi-six-figure earner, married to the same man for nearly 40 years. I'm a homeschooling mom of 7 and totally unqualified, at least on paper, but wildly called by God. Remember, He doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called. Here, we are going to talk about it all. Healing from the hard stuff, building a business with heart, raising a big family, walking in faith, and finally breaking free from the lies that said we weren't enough. So if you're ready to stop playing small, shake off the doubt and the shame, and step fully into who you were created to be, girl, you are in the right place. Let's go. Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast today. I am so excited. I know. I say that every single time that I do a recording, but if I wasn't excited, you guys would be going like, why is she having these guests on there if she's not excited? But when people cross my path and they have amazing stories, and I'm like, I just know there's someone else out there who needs to hear this story from a different platform or expanding the platform in some way. You bet your bottom dollar I'm going to get them on this podcast and we're going to talk about it. So, friends, today my guest is Angelina Rivera. She's a coach, consultant, a strategist with over 25 years experience in manufacturing and supply chain. She is the founder of Refine Consulting and host of the Refine and Shine podcast, which I was just recently on. Angelina became a mom at the age of 19, and she has built a thriving life, a business, and an amazing family. She now empowers others through coaching, corporate training, personal growth strategies rooted in Lean Six Sigma and process improvement. Welcome, my friend, to the podcast today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here today.
Yay. Well, I didn't even realize how much we had in common until, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, we were chitty chatting. I don't know if you had listened to my podcast or we somehow, like we've been friends for a few years, but never really tight in each other's space. And so when I heard your story, I was like, oh my goodness, we have so much in common. I have got to get this woman on the podcast because you have some experiences that I don't have. And I truly believe there are things that other women are going to glean from your story. And so I'm just going to stop talking, girl. Like, I want to hear your story. Take us back to when you were 19 or previous, wherever you want to start. Give us a little bit of input and give us that story. Tell that story for us.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much. And I will say that this is really the first time I've really dug deep, and especially I've dug deep a lot, but to be in a public forum to go
Mm-hmm.
into this. So excuse me if I start to cry, but I also think that as we cry or if the tears come up, I
Mm-hmm.
think it's important because that shows that we're healing. And
Yes.
so, and it also, I just want to have an impact on others who may be hearing this today, that no matter when you got pregnant, it doesn't mean that your life is over, because that's something I want to just be clear about, because that's what a lot of people think. And um, so to start my story, I guess you'd have to go back, 25 years ago. My life looked very different. But to really understand it, I think you have to go back into like my beginning journey. You see, my mom, I was born to a very young mother. I was her third child. She was 20 by the time she had me, and I was her third child. She had married at the age of 16, had her first child at 17, and then her second child at the age of 19, and then me at 20.
Mm.
My sister and I, the one that she was 19 and then me at 20, were a year and a 1 week apart exactly. So watching her navigate through those challenges kind of helped shape me to who I am today. And after I was born, my parents did separate for a little bit. There's a whole nother podcast that could be about my birth journey, but I was born at home um, unexpectedly and caused some issues. But my parents did separate for a little bit, and then they reunited for a little bit, had two more children, and then they finally did divorce. And then later, my mom had another child, my youngest sister. So altogether, she had 6 kids. And my youngest sister and I, our gap is 10 years apart, whereas my older sister and I were about 3 years apart. And so there was quite a big gap in between there. But I remember watching my mom always work so hard. I always watched her. I remember the exact time that or exactly how it looked like when she graduated with her bachelor's. She was the only one out of a family of seven who ever got her bachelor's. And I remember that. And I'm like, okay, at 16, she got married. She still got her bachelor's, even though, and I remember it. I think I was probably 5 years old when she got it. I remember what we ate. I remember all the things that we did. And so watching her go through that journey, watching her, be a single mom at times. And later after my youngest sister, her dad, my mom and her dad separated, my mom pretty much just was a single parent. And I would see her typing her notes at night, would waitress at night, go to school. We'd listen to her recordings because back in the day, you could record lectures of your teacher and she would just play them. We didn't even have a tape player in the car, but she would play them on like a little Walkman type radio and we would just listen to her recordings over and over, her lecture notes. And so it made me want to become very educated. When she would keep us busy by having us learn the states and the capitals of the states, the mountain ranges, all of these types of things, just to keep us busy because we were very poor. When I say we were poor, like when I was born at home, I was actually born in the projects, which is the lowest of low income housing you can be born in. I remember us struggling, having to be on food stamps at times. I remember one Christmas we were getting ready to decorate the Christmas tree, and my mom got a call on the phone, and it was somebody saying, "Hey, you were put in for some type of charity. If your family is home, we'd like to drop off a Christmas tree." And it was going to be a live Christmas tree. We always had this fake one. We were going to drop off a live Christmas tree, and we have some food for your family and some gifts for your children. Well, whoever nominated us must have been at our school or somebody from our school because they only gave us presents for 3 kids, not knowing that my mom had 3 more kids. So it was all of us when the older 3 were in school. Well, my youngest hadn't been born yet. My youngest is turned. So it was a family of 5 at that time. I remember that Christmas. It was one of the best Christmases because we had never had a real tree, like the smell of the Christmas tree. But anyway, as she went through life, I also remember, we struggled, but my mom was very frugal. We never went without, she always made sure we had school clothes. Like she taught us the meaning of how to get things on layaway, like all the things that she had to do. And I appreciate that because I knew that when I worked later in life, I wanted to make sure that I was very good with my money as well. And later on life, as we went through this journey, my mom didn't let us get our driver's license unless we had a car. So I started working paying taxes at the age of 14, but I would get odd jobs here and there as young as 10 years old, watering the lawns. Later, we had moved into a mobile home park. And there was, when there was empty lots for the trailers and to keep the lot marketable, when the manager went out on vacation, she would hire me and my sister and we'd water the lots, keep them looking nice. I would babysit as much as I could. I would do everything I could to have my own money. And at the age of 14, I was able to get hired for the courthouse. And it was during the time of the Aaron Brockovich case, because where I lived, in the PGE case, it was during that time. And I worked for the courthouse for 2 summers. I was very excited because minimum wage was $4.25 and I was getting $4.50 an hour.
Wow.
I was guaranteed 40 hours a week. So I made a lot of money those summers, helped by my braces for my teeth. But my teeth were very bad where I had like vampire teeth. I had very overcrowding. And so I really worked really hard. And I always told myself, I will always make sure that I work hard so that my kids can have all that they have. But actually, I didn't really want kids. Not because I wanted to be selfish. It was because I didn't think I could provide enough for them. I didn't want them to suffer. I didn't want them to have the challenges that I had. And not to say that my mom's parenting was bad or anything like that. I just really wanted to be the successful person to provide back to the world in any shape or form. But of course, you fall in love, right? And so when I was 13, my older sister had become a mom. So I was an auntie at the age of 13 and she was 16. So that was, I would see my sister struggling and, but I loved my niece. I loved everything that they had, It was kind of fun because it was kind of like playing like with your baby doll, but
Yes.
but
Right,
I also
right.
saw like the late nights and all the things. And I had also seen that when my mom had her youngest at, I was 10 when my youngest sister was born, so I don't remember helping out. So babies had always been kind of part of my life and my upbringing. Um, but when I was 15 years old, I had met my husband. We were in high school, we were 15 years old, and one night I had heard that he had liked me. And then that same night we went to a football game, and I had never went to a high school dance, but that particular time I was going to go to the high school dance and he was there. And we got to talk and we got to dance, and but we just talked a lot, but we never really had a relationship at that time because we knew he knew I was going to leave. My mom had decided she was going to buy a house out of town, a half hour from where I went to high school, or grown up my whole life at. And she ended up buying a house on an auction. And so we were able to, took some time to rehab that house, but we eventually moved. And so I changed schools my sophomore year of high school. And so kind of lost in touch with some friends, those friends that I kept, friends I knew forever, they'd call me on the phone here and there, but it was long distance. You had to pay money for that. And I was very stingy with my money because I wanted to make sure I had money. I was having a hard time finding a job. I was still 15 at that time, and I was really having a hard time finding, like, I was away from all the people I used to babysit with. Finally, my dental hygienist, she needed a babysitter for that summer. And so I was able to get more money, work for her, and have some money saved up. So got to make those phone calls. But one day I got a letter in the mail. I mean, we're talking snail mail, right? So it was in the summer. I was 16
No
years old.
cell phones back then, right,
Yeah,
friend?
right. Got a letter, and it was from my husband now. And he had told me that his family had moved. And even though we're still in different towns, we were kind of closer. We were about 15 miles apart, but still it was a half hour driving. But the thing is, the phones were no longer long distance, so we could start making those phone calls. And we would talk every day. Once I was done babysitting, we would talk on the phone. And I truly felt like we just talk about everything. And I truly felt like we fell in love before we were even dating.
Yeah.
And so eventually we started dating. September 8th, he had asked me out to be his girlfriend. And so we were 16, we started dating. And then I got my first car. I was able to buy my first car, but I couldn't drive it yet until I got my license. So my mom would drive my car until I got my license. And then eventually, though, we continued to date. We didn't have the traditional relationship where we could see each other every day or things like that, but we would talk on the phone. And I think that really helped make us closer. And eventually, after I graduated high school, in December of that summer or that year, we actually moved in together. And from there, we did think we were going to start a family. That wasn't in the plans. And it happened. And so I remember, though, I had just started a new job. I had just started my first official full-time job with benefits. At I was had just turned 19, full-time job. So I was like, wait, but you had to you had to be there for 30 days before you could start, getting benefits. And I started throwing up 2 weeks into the job. Oh, what's going on here? And I didn't say anything to anybody. I was just like, oh, I'm just food poisoned. And then I remember taking the test, and I was pregnant. And it just kind of made me slow down a little bit because I was always such a hard worker. And when I mean hard worker, I would go even after I graduated from high school. I lived with my we were boyfriend and girlfriend at the time. I still worked full time. I went to college, or I worked as much hours as I could get at my job. I was going to college full time. Like I was doing all the things, and I had to stop. Like I couldn't. I got very sick at my pregnancy, and I was like, I got so sick that when my son was I was pregnant at 3 months old, 3 months into it, I could tell I was having a boy already. And I even got put on bed rest and all these complications. And I was like, okay, God is telling me to slow down. And, but through it all, we ended up having my son. But at the age of 19, I was pregnant, and I mean, delivered my son. And it just made me realize, like, how precious life is. Like, you have your nieces, you have your nephews, you have all these things, but how precious it is to deliver your own baby, or even
Mm-hmm.
just having the kicks and have somebody you're responsible for. So I know some people
Right.
aren't able to have children, but just having somebody that you're truly the only one responsible for.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. So now, did you say that you you were already graduated when you guys moved in together. Is that what you said?
Yeah,
Okay.
we were 18 at the time.
Okay. Okay. So my story is a little similar, except for I had not graduated high school before we ended up living together. And it was like another year later before I ended up getting pregnant. But I was like, oh my goodness, is there and yet another similarity here? But yeah, we had lived together for about, I don't know, 4 or 5 months before I graduated. And so, were you guys already planning to get, like you were living together? Did you think you were going to end up getting married even before you got pregnant?
Oh, yes. So we didn't actually end up getting married. He proposed in April of that, I think it was March or April timeframe, but I didn't find out I was pregnant until later.
Okay.
And we kind of can pinpoint what we went to Hollywood right before I started this full-time job, and we think that's all where it happened. But it was actually our first time that we actually had taken a few days off of work, both of us. I was in between jobs, but we had taken a few days off of work, and we just went in to just kind of have fun. We're not that far from LA, so we drove down
Mhm.
there and just kind of traveled, went to the beach, did all the things because we did not know. I mean, I was going to be working a Monday through Friday job. My husband did shift work, so we never knew when his shifts were going to be. But he had already proposed to me, and I had the ring and everything. But life, the way that life happened, we had our struggles. I
Yeah.
will not say that there was no struggles when we had our son. I mean, yes, we had the health issues for a little bit, but I think it was really hard. I think that, it's my husband's side of the story to say, but I think he struggled with becoming a father, not really having a father in his life.
Mhm.
Um, but we worked through everything, and shortly we found out that we were going to have another baby. Uh, about 2 years later, or a year and a half later, that we were going to have another child. We ended up losing that child. That was actually the day that I launched when I launched my podcast. It was on the anniversary that she would have been 22 years old of age.
Mm.
I lost her at about 5 months pregnancy, and that was really, really hard. Where I think that almost broke our relationship, and it was just such a struggle. We both didn't know how to deal with it. Um, Kind of blamed each other, not really knowing all the things that we know now about. And there's
Mm.
nothing really to help you grieve. At that time, there was nothing to help you grieve those types of things. But we always know that it's all part of God's plan. And about 6 months later, I was pregnant again with my daughter. And immediately I started having issues, complications immediately. So we had decided that we were going to buy a house, but we were going to, he was going to live with his mom. I was going to live with my mom, just for us to kind of save up money. It was going to be too hard for us to kind of live together with where I was working, where he was working, logistics that we were driving. And then kind of like when I was at work all day, he had my son. Like we didn't separate. We just knew that it was better finances
Yeah.
for us to do it this way. And when we did that, that's when we found out. After we decided, then we found out I was pregnant after we had stored all our stuff away.
So you did what you had to do to make it work financially, which that's so admirable because you said earlier, like you really watched your mom work very hard, make sacrifices for your family, and you took that on. And it sounds like that's exactly what you and your partner at the time, because you guys weren't yet married, but you were making the sacrifice for financial reasons for the future of your son, and then of course finding out that you're expecting again. And I do want to just take a moment and say that I am very sorry for your loss, and I'm sure that that doesn't get easier as time goes on. And the good news is one day you will see your sweet little girl in heaven. So I just want to take a moment and just say I'm really sorry for your loss there, friend.
Thank you. Thank you. It took me a long time to talk about it. But I appreciate that. And I think that, more people understand like when we have our healing, and that's the thing that we've talked about when you were on my podcast, is when you go through the healing, you realize that there are a lot of stories you don't share because you're scared of people to judge you. You're scared of what people may think of you and
Hmm.
all the things. And, even when you go to the doctor's office and they say, how many pregnancies you have, and have three, but only gave birth to two. And, it's wanting to explain it. And it's like, yes, you had a miscarriage, but I was like, what do people think I aborted, or all these other things? And I was like, it was all those types of things that I always dealt with and struggled with until I was like, no, it's just a part of your story.
Right.
But
Absolutely.
when we had my daughter, that was my daughter Selena. So we had Marcus first, and then it was Selena. In between the child that we lost, we called her Mariah.
Hmm.
And when I was pregnant with Selena, we had, didn't know we were pregnant. And then I found out I was pregnant and immediately started having complications. I worked as much as I could, but then at 3 months, I got put on bed rest until 6 months of pregnancy. And I feel that that was a God's blessing because he wanted me to slow down again because like here I am working really hard, and then lost the child, and I was still going to school full time as much as I could, working full time, trying to rate like my husband and I would sometimes only see each other an hour to 2 hours a day um, on the weekdays just because of my schedule. But we were doing the best we could. We never used financial assistance. We never went on any of those types of things because I worked full time with benefits. We actually didn't qualify for a lot of programs, which was a blessing. And sometimes people were like, if you would have just not worked so hard, you could have had them. I was like, well, whatever God wanted me to do, I believe he aligned me to be a
Hmm.
hard worker and to work the way that things aligned with me.
Yeah.
Um, but what was a blessing with it is once I went back to work and then we found this house. And so we bought our first house together. And then we got our keys to our house. And then the next day I went into labor with my daughter. So it was, and the whole time though, with all the health scares and all the problems with my pregnancy, I mean, at between 8 to 9 months, I was having to get shots because I was going to labor all the time. Never knew what I was having. And so found out we were having a girl. And I remember my husband crying so excited about it because she had, delivered, when we delivered her, she was a girl. And we had decided, God blessed us with our boy, God blessed us with our son. Um, and that we had bought our house and we needed to finally get married. And
Hmm.
so we ended up getting married that same year. And that's kind of been our story. And like I said, it's not always been easy. And when I say it's not always been easy, like the things we've suffered through, um, like the loss of a child we've suffered through. He lost his dad, like his biological dad, but even though they weren't close, it still hurt him a lot because we were the ones that had to pick up the pieces for that.
Yeah.
Alcoholism, which
Mm.
today or this week he celebrated 11 years being sober.
That's
Um,
amazing.
so it was not without its struggles. And, my husband also, about, I don't even remember how many years into our marriage, he always had some health issues here and there, but he actually, and I had some cancer scares. And so I had multiple surgeries. And then my husband actually became medically disabled due to his mental health issues. And
Mm.
so and that was a big part of our struggles was that you have together we were making six figures, which we were super proud of ourselves because here we had come from all these struggles and we finally got it to six figures
Hmm.
to losing half that income, more than half that income. The doctor just one day said, you cannot work. I'm taking you off for 6 months. And that was pretty much it. And so and from there became again, always feel like understand the journey and also understand that things are materialistic. Like you can lose things, things like that, but your family, as long as your family's together, that's what matters. And so through that struggle, we did lose our house. Um, we lost a lot of things, pieces of things, but we didn't lose each other. But we almost did. And we had to work through that. And we had to, we started going to church together. We really just worked through those things. My husband became sober. And now we're just and kind of in we had to go through a rebuilding season.
Yeah.
And then from there, I was able to, through the hardest struggles, though, I was able to keep progressing in my career, where I made surpass what we had once our income together combined. I have
Hmm.
surpassed that by about 1.5 times. Through,
That's awesome.
yeah. So that's just a little bit of our story. I mean, I think sometimes it's really hard to talk about, and there's things that you just don't realize, but I think that through our struggles, you just got to rely on like it's just a season. It doesn't
Hmm.
mean life is over. When I say that things were hard with my husband, meant like his mental health was really bad. There were days I didn't know if I was going to wake up and have my husband still. Like it was really
Hmm.
hard. And I think you get to appreciate every day as a blessing, and every day is a day that you can make it through it.
Yeah. For sure. Wow, that's beautiful, friend. And so just I want to go back for just a minute to being a teenage mom. And so when you look back at being 19, and I know that your mom had several children by the time she was 20, but what do you feel like was one of the biggest challenges, or were there any challenges for you basically when you were, 19, almost 20? I was 19 as well. And you kind of had an idea that you were going to be with this man anyways, because you were living together, same here. But do you feel like there were challenges in the fact that you were young? I mean,
Mhm.
today most people are not getting pregnant even in their early 20s. Like we see statistically speaking that people are waiting until they get older to have babies. And so do you feel like there were any real challenges, or were you just already so equipped with knowing, hey, like my mom did this and I know that like I can push through, I know I can manage this?
So I knew I could push through. The hardest part for me, there was the challenges I would say is that you want to go out and hang out with your friends, or you want
Mm,
to go and do these things, and yet you have to find a babysitter. When I turned 21, I was still nursing, things like that. I didn't
mm,
have the typical young adult type of lifestyle. I also felt disappointment a little bit in myself, and that I didn't progress in my education as fast, like as what I wanted. And
mhm,
it wasn't, and it was because, at first I had that like it was like you didn't finish this in this time and you have to do this in this time. But then I was like, it's all in God's timing. I finally got I did get my associate's degree. I got two dual associate's degrees. My son was there for my graduation. He was about 3 years old, and he was there and with his little chubby cheeks and got to
mhm,
watch me. And and it wasn't the same like when I remember like my mom so vividly, but when I did finally get my bachelor's degree, my kids were there too. So I did
yeah,
show them, if you start something, you can complete it. And it
yeah,
doesn't matter that you have to do a degree in 4 years or this or that. It's like life throws at different things at you, but you got to
mhm,
just keep going. Or it's also a time that you can rest and pause and take care of what you need to take care of. There are times when I had to stop going to school, obviously,
mhm,
just because finances. Also just wanting to be there for my children and not have to work full time, go straight to school full time. Because when I had my daughter, I was still in school because I was trying to get as much done. So I would work, go straight, well, right before I had her, I was working, going to school. My husband would go drive an hour and a half just to bring me the kid, to bring me my son, just to kind of spend some time in between classes.
yeah,
Like there was different things that we had to sacrifice. And
mhm,
I don't really actually think that I've ever talked about that to my kids and what the sacrifices that we went through
mhm,
to help provide for them.
yeah,
But I also think that, like I said, you deal with not being able to take your kids to school the first day. So luckily for me, I was always able to have a job where I could take my first job, that full-time job. I got 5 days off for vacation total. He didn't get sick leave. And so that was a struggle because my son had to have surgery at 3 months. He had a hernia, and so an umbilical hernia, had to have surgery. So there was those types of things. If your kid's sick,
mhm,
you're still having to press through. But what I would say is like just do the best that you can, and also make it remember. And this is something that I used to beat myself up with,
mhm,
but I made the best decision I had with the resources that I had.
yeah, yeah,
So
I totally agree.
so maybe I didn't, some people said, oh, you worked too hard when you could have got on this program, but this program. I made the best decisions with what I had. There wasn't like the internet wasn't big back
Yeah,
then. There wasn't all these resources that there is today. And I nursed my children. So I was able to, that was a blessing to be able to nurse them. I had that bond with them.
mhm,
Every doctor's appointment I was there for. When my kids, like my son had speech therapy, I did as much as I could. I was always there for their first day of school. I volunteered for their school on my vacation days were spent volunteering whenever I could.
yeah,
Every field trip except for one field trip I went on that they didn't have the one field trip I didn't go on, they didn't have chaperones. Like even when my son was in high school, he had went on a field trip and I was the only parent volunteer that wanted to go. And I'm like, well, if you want me to go, it was a Saturday and no parents volunteered. And I was like, I'll go. It was the best field trip. It was a leadership program. And we got
mm,
to like do these obstacle courses, but before you go on the obstacle courses, you had to like work as a team. And then you had to go and then you got to like, so it was teaching us how to lead a team, how to work,
Hmm.
how to conquer fears. And at the end, you get to zip line down. You climb up this course and you zip line down. So
Yeah.
it was those type of memories. And I think that I wouldn't have, if I would have waited to have children, I don't think I would have had a bond like I had with my children.
Mm,
And
yeah.
I think that that's, because I see people like some of my best friends who've had kids later on in life, and I see that they're very tired. Um, they rule some parents rule by or use social not social media technical devices, your cell phones and iPad, what are the tablets, whatever, to just put them in front of their children instead of just reading books and
Yeah.
things like that. And I will say that as my kids, even though my kids, I worked full time, one of the things I did for my son and my daughter was I did a preschool program. It was a homeschool preschool program where you get the curriculum and you have the teacher come and visit you once a week. You never knew what curriculum page she'd want, so we made sure we did all the pages. And we did that together. And my
Yeah.
daughter learned how to read at 3 years old. And it just also taught my kids, my kids started making dinners at a very young age. My son didn't understand fractions and was like, why do I need this in a real life? Okay, you're going to make 2 boxes of macaroni and cheese
Yeah.
and
You know,
little things like that, and giving them dinner nights. And started when they were in high school, I would make them, give them a budget. Here's $100 in the summer. You guys are responsible for making 3 dinners, and then buying a couple snacks, and then having to figure out budgets and things like that, because that's something that I had, even though I watched my mom struggle and I knew
mhm.
that she was very good financially, I was feeling like I was giving my kids too much, and I needed them to understand the value of the dollar. So I started
Right.
doing those exercises as well. And I
So
think
you
that
were basically you were homeschooling them because I've been a homeschool mom for 26 years, and that is one of the things that we, like we do book work, don't get me wrong, but real life experiences like cooking and giving them a budget and having them go to the grocery store or whatever, those things are real life way more than fractions or word problems. My
yeah,
youngest right now, he's like, oh, these word problems, it's about to do me in. But one of the things you said about reading, it was just striking a little chord with me because one of the things that I have said to people over the years with homeschooling, I was a homeschool nerd until COVID. And then everyone was like, you're the best thing ever. Tell us about homeschooling. All of a sudden, I became Wonder Woman. But my fourth son was telling me today, this is his office that I'm sitting in, and he was telling me about how he reads to his little boy who's 4, and how he reads to him pretty much every night. And he said, yeah, mom, I got out this book and that book, and these were the books that you used to read to me, or grandma read to me when she would visit. And, it just did my heart a world of good to hear that from him today. I loved just that part. And so when you were talking about just all the reading, that's the thing that I've said to people over and over again. If you can't do anything else with homeschooling, read, because your kids will learn spelling, they'll learn grammar, they'll learn history, all kinds of things from reading. It literally is the number one thing that I tell people all the time with homeschooling is just keep reading. And then I love the fact that your kids were at your graduation. That's so
yeah,
beautiful. I had started going to college after I had my first son and got pregnant about the end of my first year, finished that year, and then that was it for me. But that's one of the things that always held me back because I didn't have a college degree. I felt so much pressure that was something that I needed. I don't feel that anymore. Praise the Lord for that. But I'm so proud of you that you did that and your children were able to see you get that associate's degree and then go on and get your bachelor's degree. So kudos to you, my friend. That's awesome.
I love that you shared that you really don't need it today, right? You don't need it as much as it was.
Hmm.
But for me, the reason I wanted it, so not only because I saw my mom do it, but one of the reasons that I felt like so, and I don't pressure my kids. My kids did a few years of college. My daughter got her associate's degree, but my son, it just wasn't him. He's not that type of learner. He's more of a
Hmm.
hands-on and is a journeyman mechanic making really good money. So I'm like, it's good. Your path is different. I was working in a manufacturing world. I was working in a male dominated industry. And in order for me to move ahead, I felt that I needed to have that degree to prove who I am.
Hmm.
And even though I was very knowledgeable, I had all these certifications. And so once I got that degree though, I had already gotten my last promotion, but before I left that company. But when I got that last, you know, I got that degree, that promotion, and I finished that degree that same year. It did open up a lot more opportunities for me in a male dominated industry,
Yeah.
working in the manufacturing. And that was something that I thought was really important because I knew I knew I wanted to leave a legacy for my children. And that's not necessarily saying that using a degree will leave a legacy, but I wanted to show them I started something, I'm going to finish it
Mm-hmm.
because I had instilled that to them. And I always told them it's not what you want, but when I had sacrificed so much time to go to school and
Mm-hmm.
they could see it. And one of the things that helped me was during COVID, my daughter would be, or even prior to one of my certifications, I did a certification through Harvard. My daughter was doing homeschooling, or, COVID happened and she was doing a lot of schooling online, and she went to college and high school at the same time. So we would sit at a coffee spot, a local coffee spot. And in order for her to feel like she was learning with somebody, I would sit in we would sit in a booth together and we would just work on our work together. So that way we felt like we were in a college or a learning environment, because she needed that
Yeah.
to get her, her focused. And
Yeah.
so
I
that's what
love
really
that.
pushed me.
Yes, I love that. That's awesome. And so you and your husband have been together how many years now?
We lose track if you count. So I was 15, 30, almost 30 years.
That's awesome. Yes, you count. I say all the time, I've had the same boyfriend for 40 years this December. And people are like, wait a minute, I thought you were married. I'm like, well, I am married. And that'll be 37 years this month. But in December, it will be 40 years that we've been boyfriend and girlfriend. 40. So I'm like, wow, 4 decades seems like a ton of time. So, girl, you count every single day. Like it just makes the story so much more powerful. And so you guys do you have two children?
We just have our two children. But
Okay.
what I would say is, and I love that you say that, your boyfriend for almost 44 decades. We actually were talking about it, my husband and I, the other day, and we were like, we haven't been married we've been married, I don't know how many years, 22 years, but we have been together and we have been living with each other more than we lived with our parents.
I love that.
Yeah, and that's kind of like when you think about it, it's like, oh, I was like, we kind of grew up together, and that's what we
Yeah.
talked about. Like we kind of helped raise each other, and help stabilize each other. And I think that we've
Mhm.
been the most stable for each other.
Well, I tell my kids all the time, I'm like, here's the thing. You are an adult way longer than you are a kid. So through our homeschooling journey, we have always like, not that our kids didn't have friends, because they certainly did, but we always tried to put them around other adults so that they would learn. The more they could learn, my dad specifically, like he is a Vietnam vet, he is a history buff. And one year he came, well, he and my stepmom come often, but they had stayed with us for like 3 months this one summer or throughout the school year, basically. And we didn't do history. My kids sat at the feet of their grandfather and he just talked like he has the gift of gab. I've said it a zillion times. He talked about Vietnam, he talked about history, and they just every day they would be like, can we just sit and talk to grandpa? And we just kind of put other things on hold for a while because I knew our time was so limited with him. So just hearing all those different things about how you can read and how you can learn and how you can sit at the feet of someone else and learn so much is such a beautiful gift that we don't really know how long that's going to last. But I love that you guys have this amazing story. And I do want to, before we hop off, I do want to talk to you a little bit about your podcast. And I want to hear about your business because you have built a thriving business. You're very successful. And I would love to hear about that. I know our listeners would want to hear because I personally don't know that much about it. And so I would love for you to share a little bit about that so our listeners can hear as well.
Yes. Before you start that, before I go into that, though, I appreciate that your dad is a vet, and that's one of the things. Like, of all the things that me and my husband have been through, one of the things that we are, we're proud of our children. We're proud that we are parents. We're proud that we've been together. But we also help veterans too, through use of remote control cars, and that has really helped my husband with his mental health journey, because there's so many vets that are out there, and we help first responders as well, that they lose that community. And once they come back from, get out of service, they lose that community of people and that community of brotherhood, and things like that. And so we use remote control cars something that maybe somebody who's in a wheelchair who can no longer, um, walk and, something that they can tinker with their RC cars, they can control the cars, but we can coordinate, crawls, we call them, and do remote control cars. And so that's something, so I thank your dad for his service. And that's something that I'm really proud that that's a part of a nonprofit organization that we've become a part of and been really heavily involved with in the last couple of years.
That's
But
awesome. We'll be sure and include that in
okay.
the show notes because I want people to be able to check into that as well.
Oh, yes, I appreciate that. So the reason I started my, well, first I'm going to Refine and Shine podcast. Refine and Shine podcast, I launched that. We just hit our 1 year anniversary earlier last month, actually. And the reason I wanted to put that out there is I wanted to share people's stories because we all go through things. And it's about refine and how we had all these issues in our lives that we have are, challenges that we face and how we refine to become the person we are today to shine.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the word shine because it's something that's always meant a lot to me through some of my most challenging times. And I use it as, I don't remember what the word is called right now, but it's kind of like an acronym, I guess you could say. I think that's the word. Because I always say that S means show up every day. You got to show up. Even if you show up for yourself, you got to show up. So show up every day. H I use as have good habits. Every day, we have to have habits that we practice, good habits that we practice. I is intentional. Intentionally be present for whatever you're working on. Intentionally be present for your children. Intentionally be present at dinner or whatever you're working on. Or, if you're working on a project, just put your full intention to it. Be intentional. N stands for never give up. Because there are times when we get challenged in life and we feel like we just can't keep going. And that just reminds you to never give up. And E stands for every day celebrate your wins. Every day. I know that during the times of coming with, dealing with the family, having a loved one with mental health challenges, it was a challenge to get them to get out of bed every day at times. So every day, if you get out of bed and you make your bed, even if you lay back in it, you still got out of bed.
Yes.
And so those are the things that it really has helped me go through the last probably 30, maybe even 40 years of my life, challenges in my life. So that's and I love that word and what it meant to me. And so that's why I put it as the refine and shine, because every day there's a way that we can shine. We can do it simply as a smile to others, because you never know what people are going through.
Exactly.
My husband always says that he tries to do one good deed every day. One good deed. If he's, letting somebody go before him and at the stop sign or the intersection or whatever, or saying thank you, or that's okay, because you never know what people are going.
Mm-hmm. What was the H? Tell me that one more time. I was trying to write it down.
Have good habits.
Oh, yes. Good. Okay. Thank you.
Have good habits. And so with all of that, so that's what my podcast is. And I like to share people's stories. I've had people who, have been veterans who have started businesses, people that have been through PTSD, a post-traumatic stress disorder from abuse, people who've lost their loved ones, people who maybe are teenage moms and have built their, a very successful business.
Yeah.
Because I feel that we all have stories, we all have things, and that somebody can relate to whatever is out there, because there's so many stories. I'm over 61 episodes already, and so there's got to be something. The Refined Consulting, I love process improvement. Ever since I was a little kid, when my mom would send the older three of us to go clean the room, I'd come out and say, "Hey, Mom, it's done," after an hour. And she'd always say, "You can't have it done in an hour. It would take me 3 hours." And I said, "I know, but there's three of us. We each were very productive for an hour. So we all spent 3 hours. We spent the 3 hours." Yeah. And she would get so mad, but we would divide up the work. Meaning I love to, if I love to play Barbies or whatever, then I wouldn't be the one responsible for the Barbies. When my other sister, who's now a librarian, she loved to read the books. I mean, I love to read now too. I've always loved to read too, but she would be the one that couldn't do the books. She'd have to do something else. Like we would all do, if you love something, but you're not going to clean it, you're going to play with it. And right. So we would kind of divide it all up and figure it all out. I was very bossy as a child, which meant I have great leadership skills. And so
me too, friend. So there's that Miss Boss, bossy pants.
But from a young child, I would always figure out ways to make things better, or more efficient. It was just a gift that God gave me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have been part of, even when I got that first full-time job that I had gotten, like where I got my benefits and everything, I immediately got thrown into a situation where I had to clean up processes because somebody had really left a mess. It was like a make or break for the company. And I got to rewrite their procedures and help them do all these things. And I thrived in it. And and so I got to go to these, a certification class and just really looking at processes. And so from there, I learned really early on the process of quality improvement, lean, which is a more of a Toyota concept, Toyota, the car, one of their
Mm-hmm.
types of processes or concepts for cleaning up the waste, basically. And so through all that, I got to get my Lean Six Sigma Black Belt certification, which just means you really are at the top level of looking at processes and working your way to improve it. It's like a 6 month certification program that I had been through. And
Awesome.
I thank you. And through all of that, like when I started my job in my federal career, I had started as a secretary. I had taken a downgrade at $7 an hour, a lost pay, to work as a secretary and work my way up to one of the second to the top positions by using my lean concepts, the certifications that I had gained, and looking at processes. I could walk down a production line and saying, okay, I can see the waste. Waste meaning we're using up transportations that we shouldn't do unnecessary movement. Maybe we have excess inventory or underutilization of people, like all of these things. And I've helped save the government billions of dollars. And the reason I love that so much is I see things that people don't see. And so
Yeah.
I said, everybody's like, you can see all these things. You can see the inefficiencies. You can see processes are broken. And so it's a gift that I have, and I love to help people clean up their businesses with it. I love to provide services. And whether you have a startup company, you're a service provider, you're an entrepreneur who's just looking to start up a business. I
Mm-hmm.
will walk you through those hard to think challenges that you don't know, like, and say, hey, you have this concept. Hey, this is what we think, and ask you those hard questions, not to like make you think a lot, but to have you get clarity on what you have to do and also help you work on the timelines for it.
Mm-hmm.
A time management expert, we could say, because if you heard my journey, you've seen that I went to school, I worked full time, I did all these things. My kids played sports too. I didn't talk about that. My kids played sports. I was a team mom. I was all of these things, but it didn't mean it was only because I was really effective with my time. I
Yeah.
was really focused and, made sure what the calendar looked like, making sure that like, I was intentionally present when I needed to be present. Um, and it's just because I learned how to balance it all, because if not, I would have been exhausted and I've had burnout. And so
Yeah.
from learning from my mistakes, I've been able to utilize those skills and I help people get their time back.
Yeah. I love that. It sounds like this is what I'm hearing right now is that those times that you and your sibling sat as your mom listened to those cassette tapes, which cracked me up because I'm like, yeah, we don't have those anymore, do we?
Yeah.
You sat there and you listened and you paid close attention and you saw things, you heard things, you were learning things. And it sounds to me like you brought that into your teenage motherhood, into adulthood, and now you're helping other men and women do the very same thing, just utilize their time properly and make basically use the best use of their time as they can as possible. And I love that. It's kudos to you. It sounds like you guys have just done an amazing job with what you're doing with veterans. I love that. And I had forgotten to mention that my dad was a vet until I started talking. And then when you mentioned it, I was like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot we were going to talk about that. I get so enthralled in the story. I'm like, oh, I forget about all the extra details that we're going to talk about. So I do have one more question for you, my friend. Before we exit, I would love to know what are your thoughts to any woman out there who is she was a teenage mom herself and now maybe she's in her 30s, 40s, 50s, I don't know, 60s even, and she's thinking I've always let this hold me back, but I'm hearing other women say that they've been able to overcome things that have held them back in the past because they started as a teenage mom, because they didn't have a college degree, because they felt like they were worthless. What would you say to that woman that is looking for just maybe what you're going to say is the key for them or for someone out there that would give them that tidbit of encouragement that might boost them on to living their best life and moving forward from that.
What I would say to them is that I believe in the power of everything happens for a reason. I believe that God, puts things in our lives for a reason. And if you have shame against being a teenage mom, or you feel like you were held back, I would say to yourself and looking at yourself in the mirror, are you saying that God wanted you to fail, or that are you failing God? And I think that's so important, because that's something that I've had to go through a little bit in my life, when I've thought I failed at doing different things, or I wasn't successful. And at the end of the day, I have to remember that everything happens for a reason,
Mm,
and that God has, He knows the plans He has for us. And I think that you're never too late to start living today. You can take today as your first step, but today is the first day that you're going to start living your life the way that God really wants you to live it. And I'm meaning that, like, if you're 60 years old and you've always felt the shame against not finishing something, what is your dream? What is your desire? What is something that you've always really wanted to do and you didn't do it? How would you feel 30 years from now you didn't make a step to move forward on that? This is the time
mhm.
to start your journey. And that's why I started my business. I've always wanted to do this. I always wanted to do that. And I'm like, once I retire, once I retire. But I also know that tomorrow's never promised.
Right.
And I have lost a lot of loved ones. And when my grandmother, when she passed suddenly from cancer, I knew that was kind of like a wake up call, that
Mhm.
she left a great legacy for us. She was the first journeyman female mechanic at the place that I had worked at. And so all of these things is like, but it just made me think, like, why do we keep waiting
Yeah.
to do this or to do that, or waiting to make the phone call, or waiting to do all these things when you can do it today?
Yes.
And so I would say that no matter if you're hurting, what's behind that? Journal about it, write about it. Maybe you write your next book. I love reading the letters that, like, my grandma, like her journals and things like that. Those are like the things that you understand. And I would say
Mhm.
that, that is a way to express whatever you're feeling, is to quickly write it out, but also, like, not live in regret, because we can't change the past. There's nothing we can do. And so I forget what the quotes is, but don't let today's worries, or don't waste today worrying about tomorrow or worrying about the past, to focus on today. I don't know how
Yeah.
that, but that's something that I live by, because we can't change it. We
Yeah.
can't change it. And you just gotta live today.
And tomorrow has its own set of worries.
Mhm.
So we can't be living in the worry of that. And I will say, this is just coming up for me, that I really never lived in the shame of being a teenage mom. But the things that I felt like were holding me back were because of that, even though I didn't live in shame of it. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So I think there are different circumstances out there where some maybe do live in that shame. But anyway, I have so enjoyed you being on the podcast today. I've loved learning these things, because some of the things I didn't know. But if our listeners wanted to connect with you, I will put this in the show notes. But can you just tell us real quick how they could connect with you?
Sure. But before that real quick, I wanted to
Yes.
comment on the part about the shame. I
Yeah.
just wanted to say I didn't live in shame about being a mom either.
Yeah.
What I did live in shame a little bit about for a very long time until recent was that I was born at home into poverty. And then I thought, I was born at home, like literally lived in the projects. But the thing is that there are a lot of people out there who are living in that same type of incomes, right now. And that I can show them today that you can live in there, but you can make that change, because I was able to become a six-figure income earner. And I think that that's possible for anybody. Because if I can do
Absolutely.
it, so can they, no matter what challenges we've been through in life. And so I just wanted to share that as well. And so
Yeah.
for people to connect with me, um, my website has all my links on there pretty much. It's AngelinaRivera.com. And my podcast is Refine and Shine Podcast.
Awesome. Okay. Well, like I said, we will put that in the show notes so everyone, because I know sometimes they hear it and then when they see it, they'll be, oh yeah, that's the one that I was. So I always like to like say it out loud if possible, and then put it in the show notes as well. So again, my friend, thank you so much for being on here today. So I just want to say to our listeners, if this podcast touched a spark with you or touched a chord, or you're feeling like, oh, wow, I can really connect with this, or I know so and so would really benefit from hearing this, please share this podcast with them. Make sure that you give us a 5-star rating, leave us a review, download it, and share it with someone else who needs to hear it as well. And until next time, my friends, always keep letting her out to play. I'll see you next time. That's it for today, friends. Thanks for tuning in with me today. I hope today's episode stirred your soul, sparked your faith, and reminded you that your story is far from over. Keep walking in freedom. Keep showing up bold, and never forget, God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. Be sure to leave a review, subscribe, or share this podcast with a friend who needs to hear it as well. Until next time, keep letting her out to play, because the world needs your fire.